First of all, what are the reasons behind the current oil price?
Because there is a growing concern in the oil industry that the oil market situation will be strained from November this year due to a production decrease decision by OPEC at the last meeting on 24th September. At the last meeting, OPEC decided to cut her oil production by 900,000 barrels per day from 1st November this year and set a new quota of 10 countries, excluding Iraq, to be 24 million and 500,000 barrels per day.
And why has OPEC decided to reduce the production of oil at the meeting contrary to expectations? And are there any political reasons behind it?
If you look back at crude oil price movement, for example, WTI, West Texas Intermediate forward price had started declining from early September, and it went down to around $27 per barrel just before the last OPEC meeting. OPEC had studied the oil market condition very carefully and concluded that an usual oil stock, oil inventory increase will happen during fourth quarter this year and first quarter next year, respectively, due to continuously increasing non-OPEC production such as Russia and resumption of Iraqi oil production and export to a certain level. So OPEC decided to decrease her production level for November before increased oil stock will have a negative effect or impact on the crude oil price. OPEC had asked non-OPEC countries to share the burden by reducing her production level as well to stabilize an oil price and oil market. These are clearly mentioned in OPEC's communique at the last meeting.
Now, it seems that Japan has not necessarily taken the increase of the oil price seriously.
It is because Japanese yen has become stronger than before. If you look at dollar-yen exchange rate, $1 is almost 109 yen today. But it was just below 120 yen from January to August this year. It means that today's yen is almost 10% stronger than before. Therefore, 10% increase of a crude oil price is offset by a strong yen.
But if this oil price continues to rise, it will eventually affect Japan's economy. So what are the concerns you have if this happens?
Of course, yes. If a crude oil price will be kept at higher levels, say around $30 of WTI for another few months or so, it will gradually have a negative impact on Japan's economy. If a crude oil yearly average price will go up $5 per barrel, then Japan's total import cost will up around 1 trillion yen, which is around $9 billion. Considering Japan's nominal GDP today is 500 trillion yen, $5 yearly climb up of crude oil price will reduce annual GDP growth rate by 0.2 points, theoretically.
On the other hand, how about the influence on the world economy? Now, for instance, how does the current high oil price affect, say, the American, European, and other Asian economies?
IMF published the latest World Economic Outlook on 18 September and forecasted world real economic growth rate in this year and next year will be 3.2% and 4.1% respectively. IMF has not changed those growth forecasts from the last one in April. According to IMF's analysis, American real growth rate this year and next year will be 2.6% and 3.9% respectively. IMF is considering American economy will continue to be an engine of the world economy, although she has a problem of twin deficit and the saturating housing market. Actual real GDP growth rate in the third quarter this year was 3.3%. And if you see the components of the American GDP, private consumption, which consists 70% of GDP, has recorded 3.8% growth. And investment in plant and equipment has also recorded 7.3% growth in the third quarter this year. Ministers of the Finance Department forecasted last September that American economy had +3 the worst period and will record a real economic growth rate of 3.5% or % toward the end of this year. So I'm afraid in case an oil price climb, it will surely have an impact on American consumer psychology and business behavior, and it will in turn have a negative effect or impact on the recovery of American economy. As for Europe, it is highly expected that economy will gradually recover from the last quarter of this year. For example, business confidence in Germany has been recovering, and the confidence ratio in September was reached to 91.9, which is 1.1 point higher than April of 90.8. This business confidence ratio in Germany has consistently rising in the last 5 months. Usually, 3 months successive increase is considered to be a sign of economic upturn or economic recovery. However, economists in Europe still point out the risk of low growth rate. One of the risk factors is actually higher oil price. So European governments are particularly watching very carefully an oil price movement nowadays. And as for Asia, Asian Development Bank has forecasted a real growth rate in 2003 and in 2004 would be 5.3 and 6.1% respectively. And she has predicted that China will continue to play a leading role of Asian economic growth. So in case a crude price will increase, Asian economy in general would also be forced to a low growth rate, because Chinese economic growth rate will be lowered to some degree due to rising high oil import bill.
So, Mr. Hatanaka, as an expert of the oil market, what would be the most suitable price of oil per barrel if you think about the Japanese and world economy?
I would consider that an acceptable price level for both oil-consuming and oil-producing countries is somewhere around $25 per barrel. However, I would say a desirable price only for oil-consuming countries, particularly countries which heavily depends on oil from abroad, like Japan, would be somewhere between $20 and $22.
Yes, I think the consumers would probably agree with you there too. Now, what are your predictions on the future trends of the price of oil? I know it's often difficult to predict, but what would be the factors that would settle the price at perhaps an appropriate level?
I would consider that price lowering pressure will become stronger, although price will continue to fluctuate. The reason why I say this is, firstly, on the supply side, sooner or later, more Iraq oil will come back to the market, and Russia, Caspian region, and West African countries will also increase their production level. Second, on the demand side, energy-efficient methods will be used more, and shift from oil to gas will continue and speed up. So, downward pressure on oil price will inevitably happen. In the meantime, an oil price today is decided by the market force and OPEC's behavior. Today's oil market, forward oil market, is a place where anyone can participate through investment by putting money, It is like a market of any commodities. So OPEC today is basically trying to affect the market psychology and also trying to adjust herself to market conditions. OPEC cannot control the market, although she can influence the market to some extent as we see today. So my conclusion to the question is, unfortunately, there are no ways of keeping or having an ideal price at a certain level. What we can do and what we should do is to prepare for the sudden price increase or supply disruption by having enough backup systems such as public and private oil inventory, efficient usage of oil, diversification of supply sources, and diversification among different energies.
Well, Mr. Hatanaka, thank you very much for your insight with us.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
And